Hi and welcome. My name is Erin James and this is The Full Pour, a weekly live broadcast from Sip Magazine where we are all about your favorite drink. This week we have Jackie Dodd, aka the Beeroness, with us, and she will be giving us a tutorial on how to cook with beer while drinking some beer. So Jackie is best known for her beer-infused recipes that has put her in front of names like Sauveur Magazine, The Today Show, Lifetime Network, CBS News, and of course, Sip Magazine. She's been featured in Imbibe, Bite, San Francisco Chronicle, and in addition to writing for a number of print publications, she's also authored now 3 cookbooks: the Craft Beer Cookbook, the Craft Beer Bites Cookbook, and the newly released Lush, a season-by-season celebration of craft beer and produce. And I'm starving. I've got my beer ready, and I'm going to bring Jackie in now. All right. Hi, Jackie. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here with us. So for starters, let's talk about your new cookbook. Tell us about Lush.
Yeah, it's my 3rd book, and it is definitely by far my favorite. I really love seasonal produce and cooking with in-season produce, and I noticed how seasonal beer is and how people outside of the beer world don't really understand how seasonal beer is and how excited we get when the new beers of the season come out. So that's sort of what this book's about. It's broken up by season, and each season kind of celebrates the produce and the beer from that season, and all recipes include beer. And it's my first vegetarian cookbook, and I felt like in order for the produce to really be the star, it had to be a vegetarian cookbook, and I love it. So far, it's my favorite.
That's awesome. So fully vegetarian.
Fully vegetarian.
That's really exciting, because I feel like beer is often just thought of with burgers and pizza. So it's nice to see it matched with asparagus.
It's kind of funny to me because there are so many vegetarian vegans in the beer world that I've met. So I feel like as far as the beer community goes, it's sort of in line with the people who are really passionate about beer, because if you're passionate about your food and where that comes from, I think your drink kind of naturally goes along with that. So I think that craft beer kind of pulls in a lot of vegan and vegetarian people anyway. So
how did you get into cooking with beer?
It's kind of a long story, but I think that that's sort of how it started for me. I was always really loved cooking. And the more I started to kind of look into where my ingredients were coming from, beer kind of went along with that. And I always liked beer, but once I started looking into flavor profiles, and I got really interested in craft beer and kind of pulling at that thread and exploring that whole world, and it just kind of sucked me in. And when I started, there wasn't a lot of cooking with beer recipes. Cooking with wine obviously has always been a thing, but cooking with beer wasn't really something that was really respected the way that cooking with wine was. So I went that route.
Good. What have you found that beer can contribute to a dish? Obviously, there's a variety of styles, but maybe speaking broadly, or if you want to speak maybe ales and lagers and stouts or dark beers, or
I think that wine, I'm an equal opportunity drinker. I drink everything, but when it comes to cooking, beer just has a lot more to offer than wine does. It has so many more ingredients, and literally anything you can eat, somebody has figured out how to put in a beer. But one of the things that beer really brings is beer's a great leavening agent. So it's really, really great. Instead of using water for your breads or cakes or, whatever you're baking, using beer is sort of like this baking super liquid, because it has yeast and it has grains and it has carbonation and it has all these things that you want to put into your baked goods. It's also a meat tenderizer, so it's great for brining different types of meat, especially meat that tends to dry out, like pork loin. And then also the flavors. The flavors are so great that it's really fun to see how you can work them into different dishes.
Great, like breakfast, like the beer bread cinnamon roll muffins.
Yes, for breakfast or dessert or whenever, especially right now where I feel like the whole days are kind of leading together.
Oh yeah.
It's a whenever you feel like eating it kind of a thing.
Definitely. Well, let's get started, or let's get cooking, drinking. I've got a can of Georgetown Rogers Pilsner go-to. What are you drinking?
I love that I just found Johnny Utah in cans from Georgetown, and I was so excited because I love Johnny Utah and I just found it. But I am drinking a Reuben's You Are Not Alone, which is a beer that 100% of the proceeds go towards helping out the Seattle hospitality industry that has obviously been hit pretty hard So it's a great beer. And look at it, it's beautiful. Okay, so we're gonna start this today with, we are gonna do 4 cups of flour. And from there, we are gonna stir in a 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. Just put it right in here. This is just gonna be sort of like a dump and mix kind of recipe. So baking soda and baking powder, 2 teaspoons of each. And salt, of course. And I'm just gonna stir this up. You can use a whisk. I tend to like forks end up being a little bit better for me than whisk because nothing gets caught like in the tines. I'm just gonna stir that up, and I'm actually, for this, if you want like a super intense beer flavor, then go ahead and use like an IPA. But I want like a little bit more of a mellow beer flavor, so I'm using this Elysian Rolling Stone Lager. And it has a really great sort of mellow, it still has hops and malt in there, but they're a little bit more mellow than you would get from an IPA. And you're just gonna put the whole thing in there. So that is it. And then you stir it up. And I think one of the important things to remember with these is that you're not dealing with dough. I think that when people have made this before, they were expecting to have kind of that elastic rollout dough experience, and that's just not what it is. I mean, you have to remember that you're working with batter and not dough, so you kind of have to just sort of roll with it and know that it's gonna be a little bit shaggy, and it's gonna be a little bit, you know, a little less cooperative, let's just say. So you kind of just have to like muscle it into shape. So once you've kind of mixed it all up, you're gonna flour your surface. And, you know, I know some people use like powdered sugar and stuff, but I just, you know, good old flour. I would stay away from bread flour because the gluten content's too high and it can make your cinnamon rolls kind of tough. So you're just gonna like dump it all out like that. And you're gonna I just kind of pat it into shape until it gets to kind of the point where it's a little rectangle-ish. And then I roll it just a little, just kind of a little bit in each direction. So I'm gonna do that. So it isn't gonna be perfect, and it's definitely not gonna be like the bread type dough, like the yeasted cinnamon rolls that you're used to. So you just have to kind of let yourself just accept the fact that it's gonna be a little less perfect, but it's gonna work out just fine. So once you do that, and it's just sort of like this loose-ish rectangle that is still, you know, not perfect. There. Then you're gonna make the filling, and this is one of my favorite. I do this for every single type of cinnamon roll I use. I use softened butter, and then you make like a paste, which helps it to stay in like an even, nice little ribbon in the middle. Instead of if you put the butter on first, then the sugar and the cinnamon, then when you roll it, it kind of all falls out. So 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. You want brown sugar and white sugar. I like to use brown sugar in these type of things because I really like that sort of like deep molassesy kind of warm flavor. So you're just gonna like stir it until it makes like a paste. If you want to do this like in a food processor or with like a hand mixer, that's totally fine. Like it's gonna seem like it's not gonna come together, and then all of a sudden you're gonna be like, hey, look, I have this like delicious little paste. So you just kind of keep stirring. And if you want, I've had people make these kind of beer bread recipes with stouts, which is totally fine. But just be prepared for your dough to kind of turn brown. It's gonna look sort of like whole wheat dough, which is totally fine. But there are people that are surprised when they use like a raspberry goza that their bread's pink, which is like, it's totally fine. It's gonna taste fine, but people are sometimes kind of surprised. But with bread, especially with beer bread recipes, people kind of tend to use like what their favorite beer is, and a lot of people will grab an IPA, but you're just gonna have like a super intense beer flavor because you have to remember you're gonna cook it. So all those like really great, especially if you use like a wet hop or a dry hopped beer where you get that nice like fresh beer like hop flavor, it's gonna cook. You're basically like putting all those hops back into the boil, and it's gonna be really intense, which is fine. I mean, some people, that's what they want. But I tend to like a little bit when I'm baking, a little bit more of the maltier beers. So I'm not like a huge drink and amber kind of a person, but amber ales are actually really great to bake with. Okay, so once you've made your paste, I just sort of like put it all over this like little rectangle that I made. In just little drops. Like I just kind of put it down like that. And then from there, you're just gonna kind of just spread it evenly. It doesn't have to be perfect again. It's like, you just have to like let yourself know that it's not, especially for people that are total perfectionists. This is probably not the best recipe for you. So I use an offset spatula because it's the easiest way to do it. But if you don't have one, like just like a butter knife is totally fine also. So you just kind of try to get it as even as you can, but it's not imperative that it's completely even. So you just, you just kind of spread it around. I think this is a good for people that are like first time bakers, because I think a lot of people are kind of scared of yeast. It is something that seems really daunting, but once you give it a try and just go for it, it's not as scary. But if you're kind of just getting into baking and you really are kind of too afraid to tackle yeast, it's totally fine to start with something like beer bread and kind of go from there. So
also, yeast can be hard to find these days.
I know I have some just because I bake so often, but I heard people are ordering like industrial size batches and then sort of portioning them out for friends. But yeah, so, and I have a sourdough starter that I've been like really excited that people are actually baking with sourdough starters. So I've been able to like make recipes when before I think people were like, no, we don't care. But now people are starting to care. So I'm actually really excited. Okay, so from here, you're just gonna roll it. And again, it's like, it is not gonna be perfect, but you're just gonna kind of roll it. And you're gonna start with the long edge and not the short edge. So the long edge and roll it. I think it's easiest to roll it away from myself rather than towards myself, but whatever works. And then once it's like this, I kind of like squish it a little bit like this, just to kind of compact everything. And then from there, you're ready to cut. And I know people that have used, like some people use like dental floss and stuff. I just use a knife. And I cut off like the little edge pieces. You can bake those if you want, but I just like pretty ones. So I'll cut like an inch and a half. So for the ones I made earlier today, I put them in just a regular round pan. But for these, I'm just gonna stick them like right inside a muffin tin, like that. And so I like them a little fatter. So I usually just cut them about an inch and a half, and then just kind of scoop them into the muffin tins. And this usually makes like 10 to 12, depending on how fat you cut your rolls. And if you wanted to make these the night before, you could just from here, just stick it in the fridge and then let it kind of chill overnight and then bake it in the morning. And that's totally fine. You will have to like bake it a little bit longer, but it's totally gonna work out just fine. So yeah, so from there, I'm just gonna finish putting these in their little pockets.
Where did you get that 8? Is that an 8 per or 8 one?
Yeah, it has 8.
Yeah.
My grandma, it's like super old. I think she got it like, yeah, I don't know, war times or something. Like it was one of the things I got from my grandma like a long time ago. And okay, so I made them earlier, but I put them in this round, like kind of regular cinnamon roll thing, so that I can show you that you could do either one. Like either one works out just fine. So these just came out of the oven about an hour ago. So from there, obviously you need some frosting. Like seriously, like what's a cinnamon roll without some icing? So this is basically half butter, half cream cheese. I usually put like a little salt, a little vanilla, and then powdered sugar. And then, yeah, then you're ready to go. And you can, and I tend to like be a little heavy-handed on the frosting. So if you don't, or you can do like just the powdered sugar, milk or water or whatever, like that kind of thinner icing, or powdered sugar and beer if you want like intense beer flavor. But that's how you make it. And it's super quick and easy. I think cleaning up takes longer than actually like putting them together. So there you go.
It looks so delicious.
They're for the time you put in, like the effort is fairly minimal. So it is like for what you have for what you put in is pretty fun. Especially now when it's like, what else are you gonna do? Like everybody's at home and everybody's kind of baking, and it's fun to kind of try like new baking projects. So
Pretty sure that's what everyone's doing, and why Costco is selling out of 50 pounds of flour. And
yeah, and I honestly don't think people are hoarding yeast and flour. I think that for the first time, people are actually using flour, and so they kind of have been stocking shelves according to what people have normally been doing, and I think everybody's like tripled what they have been cooking and baking. So I feel like everybody's like at home cooking and baking, like drinking beer, and I'm like, oh, you guys are all living my life now.
Yeah, I do every day.
Being at home, like cooking and drinking beer, that's pretty much my life. So there you go.
Well, I think we have time to learn how to make some IPA pickled jalapenos.
Great. And these are kind of what they look like. And I use these on so many things. I deep fry them and put them on burgers. I put them on, like I had them on hot dogs the other day. I put them on pizza. And I grow jalapenos in my garden every year specifically to make these. And there's a lot of different ideas when it comes to pickling. I like to have a brine, a pickling brine that's a little bit cooler. If your pickling brine is warmer, then you'll get like a softer pickle, whatever it is that you're pickling. And I like them a little crunchier. So if you want like a softer jalapeno, then do a warmer brine. But if you want them a little bit crunchier, then keep it a little cooler. And the way I do that is I heat up, and I'll show you when I'm done. You can cut the jalapenos however you want. And sometimes I'll do a variety, like I'll do fatter ones because those are the ones I like to pickle. And then I'll do thinner ones because those are the ones I like to put on my pizza. So you can kind of cut them to whatever kind of size you want. Another thing is if you're really worried about the heat, the capsaicin, which is what makes the peppers hot, is held in this like little membrane. And I know I'm not using gloves, so I'm going to regret this later. This little like membrane here. The seeds always get blamed for the heat, but they actually aren't where the heat comes from. It's actually this like white membrane right here. So if you're really worried about them being too hot, take all the membranes out, and you're going to drastically reduce the amount of heat you have. So this is like the easiest recipe. So you just cut up as many jalapenos as you want. And you can use any beer that you want. I like to use an IPA because I think with the jalapenos are such a big, strong flavor that it needs another big, strong flavor to come over top of it. Just like with pairing, like it's really great to pair spicy foods with IPAs. But you can literally use any beer you want. But another thing to keep in mind is that alcohol intensifies heat. So if you use a super high IBU beer, you're going to have a lot spicier pickles. So if you want that, then you should do that. But if not, then use like a session beer. So this is just some salt and some sugar that I'm going to put in. And this is apple cider vinegar, and it's warm. So I usually will do this before I put the jalapenos in. And then make sure that is all, that's all kind of, oh, everything's dirty. That's all dissolved before I put the pickles in. And then I'll put about a cup of beer in. And I like to put the beer in when it's cold because I like the brine to be a little bit cooler. But if you want like a soft pickle and you want it to be, then you want your brine warm. So I would heat up the beer and the apple cider vinegar together and then put your pickles in. But that's literally it. And then you leave it. I'd say, some people say an hour. I think that an hour is not long enough. I usually kind of try to leave it at least a week before I want to go ahead and use them. But yeah, I mean, that's it. This is your end result. They get a little bit kind of more of an olive green, and they get a little softer, and they get a little, like you can see, like, I don't know if you can see this, these, I pickle.
Come up closer to the camera and show us.
Yeah. I pickled these, I think 2 weeks ago, but let's see, like, so this, like, is a fresh pepper, and this is like, where's the camera? So it's like, there it is. So yeah, it's like, you can see the difference. But that's kind of, and it's a little soft, but it's still a little crunchy because I like to use a cold brine. But and I pickled everything. I pickled peaches, which is really great on like a fried chicken sandwich. And I pickled cherries that I put on a pizza. And I think it's really fun to look at produce and see what I can pickle. So yeah.
And all with beer, pickling all with beer.
Yeah, and I like especially like the brighter, hoppier flavors, how it goes with the pickle brine, especially with jalapenos. So yeah, that's like my life, drinking beer and figuring out what to pickle. So super exciting.
It's not a bad life. It's not a bad life. Well, I think we've been kind of answering questions along the way, but I'll open it up for any questions. Going back a little bit, someone had asked, does the type of beer matter? And I think that was in regards to the cinnamon rolls, which you did kind of touch on. You want to stay away from higher IBUs, higher hoppier beer.
Unless you really want to eat.
Unless you really want the hops, yeah.
Hops, yeah.
And you recommend anything from Pilsner and Lager all the way to Ambers and even
I think stay like lower IBU scale, like just something that has a little bit more malt than hop, and I think you just end up getting a better end result.
Awesome. Well, I'm scrolling through the comments here. We've got lovers of jalapeno pizza. And we will be posting Jackie's recipes on sipmagazine.com so that if you weren't able to feverishly make food as quickly as Jackie knows them all the back of her hand, then we'll have the recipes ready for you at sipmagazine.com. And they're also on the Beeroness.com as well. What do we bake the cinnamon rolls at, temperature-wise?
Oh, yeah, the whole recipe's on my website, thebeeroness.com, but it's 350 for about 25 minutes. So yeah, then you're good. And let them cool before you fry them.
Oh, sorry. Do you recommend letting them sit for a certain amount of time before putting icing on?
Just till they're cool enough to not melt the icing. I like eating them pretty quickly. I mean, not super quickly, but I don't like to. I think that cinnamon rolls are no good the next day, so I like to make them the day I'm gonna eat them. So I don't know, so that they're at least not gonna melt the frosting. Like 15, 20 minutes maybe.
Awesome. So, as long as you can wait to let them cool off with the smells and everything delicious happening. So great. Well, I'll leave it a little room for questions in case more come up, but tell us where we can buy Lush. Amazon, any local?
Yeah, Book Barter. I think there's a couple local places that have it, and then the big Amazon, Barnes & Noble. But there's a couple of the smaller independent retailers that have it, and there was one in Portland. What's that bookstore?
Powell, the most amazing place.
Yeah. Yes, Powell. They had it at Powell, so
awesome.
I was really glad. So yeah, it's kind of, I'll kind of see it places, and sometimes it's not, but yeah, there you go.
Take selfies in front of it. I did that with my book.
Did you really? I saw your book at like the local not harbor, but like the Flower Mart.
It said Swanson's.
in Woodinville, they had it.
Oh yeah, that's funny. Yep, it's always a good selfie. So, well, Jackie, thank you so much for joining us and teaching us how to make 2 dishes of beer. Demystifying cooking with beer. It's so much more than pairing with burgers and pizza. It is cooking with it. It's great for its acid components. Its body and weight and overall deliciousness. So we're excited to share your recipes with more of our viewers and readers.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie.
I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.